Koshin Paley Ellison, welcome to Wellish. I am so excited to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be with you.
Yay! Oh my God. I know I just told you like 100 times how excited I am to talk to you, but like I just can't even get over it. I'm like fangirling a little bit. Tell me who you are. So you're a Zen Buddhist teacher and a Jungian. Am I pronouncing that right? Psychotherapist?
Jungian.
Okay.
hmm hmm
Please break that down for me. What is it that you do exactly?
Well, that's a great question. One answer is I do what I do, like as we all do, and we do the best we can. We're just talking about the name of your podcast, which is so wonderful. Wellish. It's like, it's honest. And so the honesty is that we are all doing what we can do, and yet can we actually do a bit more? So I often think about that. And for me, part of it I'm a Zen monk and a Zen teacher and a Zen student. I'm all of those things because I feel like any good teacher is also a student, and we're a student because we have a teacher, and we're a teacher because people want to study with us. And so I love that reciprocity. And I'm also have the honor of companioning people in therapy and as a Jungian, which is to me a deeply imaginative process. And I was brought to both of those things because I know suffering and I
Mm,
know how awful and scary and traumatizing things can be because I've experienced.
sure.
And that I know what it means to feel entangled and cornered and frightened.
hmm
And so part of my own path has been to have ongoing movement into what to me healing is actually just the unfolding of our life when we're engaged with it.
I love that.
And because I think that many of us get caught in just being clear, like we know our stuff and then hang out in it.
Okay.
And, and it's not enough to know your stuff. Like, oh, I know that's just like I'm screwed up or whatever that is. To me, there's like that's a great thing to do and really important to actually know like what our challenges are, what our struggles are. And then to me, the amazing possibility is like, well, how do I meet that with courage and compassion? How do I, so what is the action that you meet your clarity with?
hmm Okay.
And so that I feel like, you know, my practice as a Zen Buddhist and my practice as a therapist and as a husband and as a friend and as a son are all about that. How do I also close the gap between what I say I care about and I value and what I'm actually doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious from a person that has a very overactive mind, and a lot of my listeners have a very overactive mind as well. Is it possible to have a completely quiet mind?
Well, this is a question I get all the time.
I believe it.
And
I just had to ask you though.
I'm so appreciative of it because it's so honest, right? And I think many people come. We have a Zen center here in New York City,
Yes.
and the New York Zen Center, and we teach meditation, and we also have incredible education programs that are really all about that integration of our values into our action.
Mhm.
And when people come here for Zen meditation, people often come in to meet with me and will say, "Oh, I have such an active mind. I can't." Ah,
Yeah. Was it me that
it
came in there?
was you. You look familiar. And, but I think that one of the things that I've learned is, so friends of mine who are neuroscientists, that, and a healthy brain has about 100 thoughts per second.
Okay.
We're aware of one, maybe two.
Interesting.
So the brain like is just a little organ, 5-pound organ, secreting thoughts about everything. It's interpreting what you smell, what you see, what you imagine. It's bringing you into like past stories. It's always just working away. And what's so amazing, because a meditation practice, from my understanding, is not about not having thoughts, but not grabbing onto them and becoming them, or like going into that crazy loop of rumination of
Yes.
like,
Okay. Yes.
so
Absolutely.
it's actually learning just to, one of my friends, Gil, he says, it's like climbing out of the river of thoughts and sitting on the bank and just watching them flow by. So it's not a problem. It just tends to be a problem when we fall back into the river and we're getting swept downstream. And so
Okay.
learning how to then just get back out, get onto the bank of the river and watch. So we're not identifying with the thought. We're just like, oh, look at the thoughts about that. What's for lunch? That email. Did I post that? Did I not post that? Whatever that is. And just like, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And it's an easy thing to say.
But not easy to do. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I always, encourage people, because many people they'll come one time and think that they're going to get their Zen on. And they're like, okay, I'm ready. I'm like all stressed out. I'm going to get my Zen on. Well, it often is really challenging.
Sure.
And to me, it's one of our students talks about like, it's the marathon. It's not the sprint.
Yeah.
So how do you just like, okay, learning how just to be steady. We fall down, we get up, we fall back in the river, we get out, we fall into the river of thoughts, feelings, and get out. And just learning how to do that without it being a big deal.
Yeah. I love that you say that, because I think that was such a large issue for me that I thought like, okay, finish line. Like I'm going to read these books and I'm going to do the things. And then one day I'm going to cross the threshold and be wonderful and great. And that's just not how it works. So I love that, because I feel that you very much bring awareness to the process, that it's always going to be in and out of the river. Are you drowning for a minute in the river? Maybe, but you're going to climb back out of it. You just kind of have to work towards that.
Totally.
What would you say is the first step in that process? Like if somebody was like, I want to get my Zen on, what would be the first thing that you tell them? We're coining that now to be a new thing.
Well, what I would say is, to me, there's this like really cool instruction of the Zen posture, which to me is also the posture, physical posture, but also like it's an awesome 4-step posture for our mind and our heart. And because in Zen, we're not interested in separating our heart and mind and spirit with anything else. So it's everywhere we go. And so what I would suggest is like finding a way to sit in a way where you feel grounded. So feeling your sit bones. If you're sitting in a chair or you're standing in line at the grocery store, just like feeling your feet on the ground, like actually making that contact.
Yes. And making yourself feel present in that moment.
Like,
Yes.
mm, mm.
Here I am. This is
Here.
real. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then actually, sometimes I find it helpful to put my hands on my lower belly, which is just below your belly button. And Zen, we call it your hara, which is just like this sweet spot, right? 2 inches below your belly button. You just put your hands there and just see if you can allow your breath to move your hands there.
For sure I can.
Even a tiny bit.
Yeah. That's awesome. Because it
And so
definitely, Go ahead, sorry.
No.
I was
I
gonna
mean,
say it definitely brings that awareness back to me, that it's I feel like I always try to focus on my breath and I'm thinking of it up here. Like and if I bring it down here, it slows it big time. Hmm,
totally, totally. And without even having to do like fancy deep breathing or
totally.
anything,
Yeah.
just like regular.
Yeah.
And so grounded and soft in your belly. And then just seeing if you can like open your shoulders even like a millimeter,
Mm-hmm.
I find like super helpful. And so just so again, grounded, soft, open. And
Grounded
then
soft.
thinking, and then the fourth one is just upright. So allowing your spine, as you know, we often learn in yoga asana classes where elongating your spine, but
Mm-hmm.
also it's a wonderful thing to think about uprightness, not just physically, but also like, am I aligned with what I care about?
Mm,
So
yeah.
being upright in your values, am I being upright in what I care about?
Mm-hmm.
And being loving or being caring or being responsible, whatever really matters most. And so
Sure.
it's like this, it's such a cool thing to like really think about, like grounded, soft, open, and upright. How am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you word that too, because it's an easy way to bring it back and center yourself and have like actual action steps to focus on instead of trying to remember all the things that you've learned in your life. I like it. So yeah,
And it's so cool to actually be in your body.
absolutely. It's again, it's very real. And that's what I think, like when we go back to the thoughts and the craziness of like everything that we're thinking about, a lot of the time it's not real. It's not happening. It hasn't happened yet, or it's happened in the past. And that just brings you to your present, to your core. This is who I am. I'm right here and I am safe and I'm okay. So I like it.
Totally,
Absolutely.
totally.
What do you think people do wrong on their journey to become Zen?
Mm, yeah, I think that you'll relate to this. I think there was a study in like the 1980s, like back in the day, where like why did most people leave meditation? It was because they didn't get better, or it's like they didn't get well, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that we have this idea that we're gonna kind of dial it in and like then I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we mostly get it wrong because we think that there's some arrival point that we don't realize, oh, this is like the long game.
Yeah. It never actually has a finish line.
No, it's just
Right.
continuous opportunities to practice, to be foolish, to be loving, to fall on our face and get up.
Sure. I love it.
And actually, I think that to me, the people that I respect and kind of look to are to like the people who know that there's value to falling down and getting up.
Amen. I was listening to Jay Shetty, if you're familiar with him, not too
Yeah.
long ago about confidence. And that was one of the main points that he said was that a confident person doesn't have the problem falling on their face. They don't have a problem asking questions and trying to gain more knowledge. And people so often think that having all the answers and being so quick-witted and knowing everything is what equals confidence, and it's so not.
Big time.
What do you still
Major.
struggle? Yeah. What do you still struggle with when it comes to Zen? Since it's a ever-going process, and I'm hoping you have something that you're still working on.
Well, to me, it's just continuous. So my husband, his birthday's coming up, and I was trying to do like a secret agent kind of thing.
Hmm. I do that every year. As if it's like not known that I'm doing it every time.
I was like doing this, like I thought I was doing this secret, and suddenly, like there he was, and I was like, "Get out! Get away from me!" And he was like, "Get away from you!" And I was like, "Oh!"
Hurry.
And so it was like it was a great moment. This happened about an hour ago.
That's awesome.
So keeping it fresh for
Yeah.
you. And
Amen.
and so just like in that moment, it was so amazing. And I said, I'm so sorry, like I mean, please go away.
Let me reword. Still need you gone. That's
But
great.
it was so interesting, that still like those like moments of reactivity are just
Yeah.
part of it. And one of the things that, he and I have this like very cool practice that we learned from a friend where, you start to say, if one of us is feeling whatever, and you say like, what's the story you're telling yourself right now? So like,
Oh.
so I shared this also in the book I just wrote called Untangled, and
Mm-hmm.
where like I just remember I was walking through the living room and he was sitting at the table and he's like, what's that face? And I said, what are you talking about? And then I was like, what's the story you're telling yourself? And he's like, you're leaving me.
Oh my God. You're like, I didn't even say anything like that.
And I was like, I'm just getting the laundry detergent. I'm going to do the laundry. And I'm like, are you good? He's like, I'm good. I'll see you in a bit. But
What a quick fix. I love it.
but I think it's so freeing just to be like, oh, right, we're always telling ourselves stories that are so crazy
Mm.
and they don't make any sense. And I think that that's the part of, I often am encouraging myself and my students to become dumb and dumber. Just like, don't have to be so smart about it, just to
Mhm.
be open and curious and foolish, and because we're always feeling these things
Yes.
and they're irrational and kooky, but I think that if we hold them too tight, they get very kooky
Mm.
and very crazy, and then we could really then start ruminating and thinking that that thought is true.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about it, is our friend Jerry Colonna, and he you know taught us this strategy, and it was genius, just to like, what's the story you're telling yourself, and is that really true?
Mm-hmm.
And somehow even just saying, well, the story I'm telling myself is you're leaving me, is already like creates this sweet distance, and you're like in perspective, like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, that's the story I'm telling myself,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like what's real.
Right. Right. How
Yeah.
refreshing what you said about just being dumb and dumber, but being open. Because I feel like it just takes away all of the expectations that you put on yourself. And as you said, so freeing to be able to be like, okay, let me take a couple steps back because it's really not that intense. I can just be myself. I can just do what I'm doing and trust that I'll find the answer.
Big time.
Yeah. So you mentioned your book, Untangled. Can
Yeah.
you give me like a little brief blurb of what the Eightfold Path is?
Yeah, so the Eightfold Path is the last part of this amazing teaching by the historical Buddha. So the historical Buddha was, it's like I love to share that his life, he was just like a person like,
Mm-hmm.
you or me, and was trying a bunch of things out because he realized, he wanted to see more clearly in his life and wanted to be free
Mm-hmm.
and didn't know how to do it. So he tried some apps and he tried, listened to some podcasts and read some books. And, he actually did try a lot of different things. And then eventually he's like, I need to like sit and face my fear, because my fear is maybe the root cause of my suffering.
Okay.
And that my fear is dragging me around to, like, when I feel uncomfortable, I try something else. So, what about if I was uncomfortable and just learn to stay there
Mm-hmm.
and not move away from it?
Mm-hmm.
And so he did that. And what he saw, he, recited this short poem when he woke up. And what he woke up to was, he said, "O house builder, thou art seen at last. The ridgepole is shattered. Nevermore will you build a house of sorrow.
Mm.
So what he saw was that he was creating his own house of sorrow.
Mm.
It's like he was creating the story of like, oh, poor me, or oh, things don't work out for me, or things do work out for me. Like all those like conclusions that we're obsessed with,
Mm-hmm.
and how we kind of put more and more giant sticky notes on ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm a loser, I'm terrible, I'm not worthy. There's such a long list,
Yeah.
that we
Amen.
all, and we all have our favorite go-to ones, the
Mm-hmm.
favorite ones that make us feel like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so he saw that. He's like, oh, I'm responsible for that. And so the Eightfold Path comes from what he realized. His first teaching was that there are these four nobilities. And as a little boy, there was this thing called like Encyclopedia Britannica, which was like these big volumes when people used to read books. Remember
Mm-hmm.
books? And I remember reading about the Four Noble Truths, and the first of the nobilities that there is struggle in life, that there is struggle. And I remember reading that like, wow, like like I felt like I was being let in on this big secret. Like
Yeah.
I felt that, I grew up in a home where there was not a lot of transparency about what was actually happening,
Oh, okay.
and kind of pretending things were okay when they were not okay.
Sure.
And so someone saying like there's struggle and suffering in life, and that's noble to say that and to see it. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And the second one is that the second nobility is that we grasp, we're like, give me that,
Mm-hmm.
or we get caught in our resentments,
Yeah.
or we get caught in the idea that we're alone. So those are the three kind of sometimes called the three giants or the three poisons. And there's a nobility just to realize like, oh yeah, I'm caught by those things. Those are part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the third nobility is that we can change.
Shock. Can you believe it? Thank God.
Well, I think that many of us forget that, right?
Completely. Completely. This is how I'm stuck forever. So gotta work
Yeah,
through
it's
it.
so painful. It's so painful, right?
Yeah.
So painful.
Mm-hmm.
And so the third one is sort of like the good news. It's like there's a planting the flag, like change is actually, you can do that. But
Yeah.
you have to go through the suffering. You
Mm-hmm.
can't jump over it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth nobility is that there's this path, this eightfold path, which is, really the practices of concentration, of meditation, of right speech, and all the different ways that we can actually pay attention and actually learn how to be in deeper relationship with reality, like how it is right now, where you are in your life, in the supermarket, at the ATM, wherever you are. And there's a different way to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
I often think about like the one about speech. Speech is a practice, and the Buddha taught about how, we have to really think about, is it true what I'm about to say? Is it helpful? Is this the right time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I heard that, that was something that I was like, oh my God. And is it true? Is it necessary? And what was the third one?
Helpful
Helpful. Yes. Because it's just like
and
so much, I
kind.
feel like, of what we say is just not, doesn't fall into those three categories, at least one of the three.
One of my friends actually took a practice on it. It's like, well, I'm gonna practice not talking about other people,
Mm-hmm.
because mostly we don't really know what's going on with other people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's such an easy topic of discussion that people have, that they're like, oh, we have this human in common, so let's just nail on them since we have that mutual thing. And they've done
And
nothing to us. We don't know anything really about them.
and I remember once being at a dinner like a couple of years ago, and with some friends who are just wonderful people, and the conversation started to make that turn where you're kind of like talking about a particular person, like,
Mhm. You feel the negative energy creeping in.
and actually, I just like saw it like, let me just see what this feels like, and it felt terrible.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just said, can we ask us all a favor? Like, can we not do that?
Did you say that?
And yeah,
Sweet.
and people were like, looked at me, and they're all like, yeah, let's not do that.
Sweet. That's amazing.
And it was like, to me, such a wonderful moment of
Yeah.
realizing, like, oh, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And everybody feels that way. Like you bringing it to light and saying that everybody knows that it doesn't feel good to talk about other
It was a
people.
relief.
Yes, exactly. It like it gives, again, takes that expectation away of trying to talk about that person and have that topic of discussion when instead we can, talk about something deeper, our aspirations, our passions, something else, and then you actually get to connect with that person instead of like defaulting to a different human being. I love that you said that though. And I think that it's so important to kind of take note of the fact that they did not respond like, Koshin, what's wrong with you? Why would you do that? Or why would you not want to talk about them? It was totally like, oh, wait a second. I'm being an ass. Let me keep
Right.
myself in check. Sweet.
Totally. Totally.
What have you learned about yourself through your work?
What haven't I learned?
Okay, that's what I was thinking you were going to tell me.
Let me think.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm not learning anything, then I feel like I'm in serious trouble. Because actually, I was just interviewing someone for we have a contemplative medicine fellowship for physicians, and someone was asking me that, like, what brings you joy about this work? And I was like, what doesn't? Like, I was just so surprised by the question, that because I realized that, like, 85% of people feel like that there's not much meaning or joy or connection to what they do,
Absolutely.
which is so heartbreaking.
Mm, mm.
And then I also, sorry, this is a little off topic,
No,
but
please.
I just remembered this statistic that a friend of mine just shared with me about a new poll that 35% of people in the United States identify as themselves as someone without a single friend.
Wow. Interesting.
35%, like more than a third of the population.
That is a huge number.
It's so
That
shocking.
that's so heartbreaking.
I know.
Hmm.
I know. So one of the things I've learned is it's just, life is so humbling. We don't really know much. And actually, maybe that's what I learned the most is like how little I actually know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know like that much,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
like an itty bitty amount. So I think what I learned the most is how important it is to relax and be curious
Mm,
and to be dumb.
mm,
And because that's actually true, and meaning not knowing a lot. And
mm-hmm.
I often, sometimes we go to places where you can see like a lot of the night sky, and like, I don't know much what, like, it's so humbling.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like doing my work is just a constant humbling to realize that the expanse of reality and of life and of other people, like, look at you, like who are you? It's amazing to
Yeah.
me. I
Yeah.
feel maybe what I learned most is about the amazement of freshness,
Mm.
and to realize that, like, wow,
And
I've
how nice to live your life like that because like there's so many people, myself I hate to admit it, but myself included, goes into situations with strangers and it's like, oh my God, I don't want them to look at me. I'm vulnerable. Don't see me. I don't know, like, whatever. Like, I don't know, trying to say the right thing, do the right things, don't want them to judge you. How much more peaceful to walk into a situation curious like that and being like, wow, the amazement, this person, what can I learn from them? It'd be such a better way to approach it.
I mean, what's their deal? Like, if we don't know it, anyone, it's so amazing because we don't really know anything. And
Totally.
like I even feel like I'm a mystery even to myself, and I think that that's the most important and the most true. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess the more I live and teach and have the honor of being with people and being in this life, I just feel like the more mysterious everything is
Amen.
in the most amazing way.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. How is being Zen and being positive linked?
I'm not sure what a positive attitude is.
Okay. It's a fun
So,
answer. Give it to
because
me. Why don't you understand?
I think that to be really, really curious is not positive or negative
Okay.
in a certain way. I think that maybe if we think about positivity and negativity, which I don't often, but if I just play with those ideas, maybe negativity comes from feeling caught in thinking you know who you are and what life is.
Interesting. So let me ask you this then, because I feel like I am always like on this like psycho like path to be like, I'm gonna figure out who I am. So like you say that, like you never actually know. Like you're always in the process of learning. Am I understanding that right?
Well, I have moments where I think I know something, and then that's not usually that helpful.
Sure.
And I mean, of course, there are things that I do know. Like I study a lot, and I love learning, and
Sure.
but I feel
Like
like in
characteristics.
general, it feels super porous. And it's not like I don't feel like a locked box of knowledge. Like I know this stuff. And oh, maybe it has related. There's this really amazing Zen story that I love very much, where this Zen teacher, some Zen teachers specialize in certain arts, and one of them was this tea master. And so this guy from America comes to a professor who wanted to study, Zen, and goes to meet with this tea master. And so they sit there in this little sweet room and pouring the tea and preparing the tea. And so he starts pouring the tea. And the professor person was like, so tell me about this, tell me about that, tell me, like asking a million questions, but not experiencing what the teacher was showing him, was just like how carefully he was scooping the tea and how he was boiling the water. And like all the teachings were there.
Mhm.
And this guy's like, tell me this, tell me that. And so the tea master starts pouring the tea and keeps pouring it as the man keeps asking questions until the tea cup overflows and starts spilling all over the man. What are you doing? He's like, well, you've gone crazy. You're not even being attentive. And the teacher said, I'm showing you your mind. There's no room for
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
So maybe like I think of that in terms of positivity and negativity, maybe, but like where is there any room for new things to come in? Or I often think about, I do have a Jewish practice in the morning before I open my eyes, that I learned this from my grandfather, where you just think about 5 things in life that you're grateful for before you wake up in the morning, before you open your eyes.
Mm.
It's so beautiful.
I love that. I'm probably gonna do it for the rest of my life.
It's so amazing, because then when you open your eyes, you're like,
Hello
yay.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so interesting because, like my husband, he's like super cranky in the morning. So like it's like and so interesting. So I always have for many years, I was telling myself a story that if he did that practice, he would feel much better.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really just about me trying to like blanket him with my stuff.
Okay.
Like he's fine.
Yeah, right. It works for him. Not trying to fix him. Yeah, absolutely. I can picture myself doing the same thing. I'm like, okay, so this works. So you're gonna try it now. That's so
So
funny.
so so I think maybe that how I relate to that kind of positivity and negativity is really just about being open
Mm-hmm.
and super alive and curious.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that comes from, yeah, I guess maybe the same kind of things about realizing, wow, look at you,
Mm-hmm.
and look at what's here.
Yeah.
Like this morning, I was walking out of our house and there's these wildfires, and so there's a lot of smoke, and yet because of the light, there was like just like all the flowers were like the oak leaf hydrangeas, which are these massive, amazing flowers, were like so vivid. They were just like, I was like, look at you, flowers.
Hell yeah.
You go, flowers. You show them who's the boss. Like
Yes,
amazing.
it is.
And I'd see so many other people walking down the sidewalk, just like me,
Mm-hmm.
But like if you open your eyes and you're actually where you are. Oh, this is the other thing. So, so the thing is, like when you're walking down the street and you actually are just walking down the street, you recognize other people who are walking down the street.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very exciting.
What do you
You're like,
mean?
oh,
Like compared
and
to
you
like
like,
looking at your phone the whole time?
or just like ruminating.
Oh,
Like
okay,
a
yeah.
lot of most people are like,
Yeah. Yeah.
or they're like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so they're
Just
like,
either way, totally not in the moment, totally not paying attention. Yeah.
it's interesting. I've never thought about like the looking at your phone is sort of almost has a very similar affect to people who are ruminating.
Absolutely. Because it's taking you somewhere different
Yeah,
than the
it's so
present.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And their faces are usually a little tight and a little flat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's so fun because then you notice, like, I saw my neighbor this morning, Maureen, and she's like always walking around the block. And I was like, Maureen? And she's like,
You're like, what up, girl? We see each other. That's
yeah.
great.
And I think that's also related to that, in terms of attitude, that it actually tends to feel better, at least in my experience,
Mm-hmm.
being where I am and being open and porous
Mm-hmm.
and receptive to reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like in a super ordinary way. Like when I say reality, like it's like dog poop on the sidewalk and flowers, like that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That you're like, is it more of like a noticing is kind of what you mean compared to like a judging? Like, ew, look at that dog poop. It's disgusting. That kind of deal.
Oh, I know another quick story.
Yeah,
So anyway,
please.
so we used to live in this building up until recently where like there was this person, neighbor, who would always get in the elevator. Whenever you saw her in the elevator, like, how are you doing? She's like, oh, it's raining. It's horrible. And then like the next day, like, oh, how are you doing? Oh, it's hot. It's horrible. It's cold. It's hot. Like you get like
Never
literally,
happy.
no matter what the conditions are, it's too much of something. It's like being caught in some like nightmarish Goldilocks story.
Yeah. 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 That's so funny. What,
Yeah.
when you are that way,
Yeah.
like, I love the teacup example. I love that story that you said you love. How does somebody become, how do you create more space? How do you get some of that tea out of there and be more open?
Slow down.
Can I tell you,
Grounded.
that's the number one thing I've learned from you on this whole thing. You talked about him learning from just the way that the guy moves. The second you jumped on the screen, I was like, I need to relax. I need to slow down.
You're like,
Yeah, literally.
yeah, like I would just say like ground, soft,
Mhm.
open, upright, just like, okay, like let's pull it together, like, but I still remember, like when I first got serious about meditating, whatever that means. And but when I started doing it very regularly, and I hated it.
Mm,
I hated it. And I went to a place where they'd ring a bell, and we ring bells here too, but like I couldn't wait for them to ring the bell. I couldn't wait for it to be over.
yeah.
It felt like an eternity. I felt like for sure like my legs were gonna fall off because they went to sleep. And it was like that was bad.
You're like peeking out of one eye.
Or not, just like, come
Yeah.
on already, like
I'm awake.
ring the frickin' bell,
Yeah.
and get me out of this hell. And so, but it was so interesting. Like, I don't know what it was, but I just like kept going.
Hmm.
And even though it was not pleasant. And like, I think that, we were talking about earlier that a lot of people, want it to be pleasant. And there was just something about really learning how to be in the unpleasant and not run away
Yeah.
that made me really interested. And
Yeah.
it made me like feel like, wow, there's some room for freedom. Like,
Okay.
wow, why is something unpleasant such a big deal? Like nothing was actually happening. Like we were just
Mm,
sitting quietly somewhere.
mm.
And I was making a big deal.
Yeah, 100%.
And
That house of sorrow. See, I'm
look at
listening.
you. Look at you, Sarah. Look at you delivering.
That's so funny. It's so true though. I mean, God, it's so much of what we do to ourselves. So I guess it's just like but honestly, that's what you're for. That's why I'm picking your brain because I'm trying to figure out how to knock that off.
Yeah. And I think it's just like an ongoing practice of
Yeah.
knocking it off. It's like, oh, here it is again. Like, but then we start to recognize, like, oh, there you are. There you
Hmm.
are. Like
Hmm.
Mr. making it into something that it's not.
Yeah.
Look at you making it into something that it's not.
Right.
And having a sense of humor about it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's super important.
Hmm. Being
I
able
think
to
we
make fun of yourself.
yeah, in a really loving way. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, come on already. It's like, oh,
There I go
here you go.
again. Reel that in. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. It sounds like a lot of it, and I know a lot of the Buddhist practice has to do with compassion. What do you think people struggle with the most when it comes to being compassionate with
Hmm.
themselves, with others, whatever?
Well, the cool thing to me about compassion is that it is yourself with the world, right? And so I think some of us have a hard time with compassion because we're not actually even in the world. We're
Hmm.
so in our thoughts
Hmm.
and separating ourselves from the world. So that makes compassion almost impossible because no one else exists. And so I think that the amazing thing is to realize, like, oh, who are you?
Hmm.
And I really do believe that we all have struggles with something,
Hmm.
and I think that, that's the historical Buddha's big thing with the first nobility. It's like we all have a struggle. So I think, and compassion, one of the definitions of it is that we struggle with others.
Mm-hmm.
And that we can actually, oh, Sarah, you have struggles, I have struggles, and that makes us more connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can feel compassion together with you, realizing like, oh yeah, you have pebble in your shoe, I have a pebble in my shoe, and that makes us more connected.
Mm-hmm. So then what about when somebody else puts a pebble in our shoe? Like, how do you have compassion for the assholes? Like the people that do us wrong, people that, like misery loves company, like that kind of a situation. How do you
Mm.
begin to
Yeah.
like be compassionate for those people?
Mm. That's called like fifth gear compassion practice,
Yeah.
and yeah, or maybe first gear. Sometimes we have to like dial it
Slow
down and be like,
down, yeah.
okay.
I'm so
Yeah,
happy you
probably.
said that because I feel like I genuinely thought you were gonna be like, you just have to be compassionate. Like you just have to know that
No,
they're going through it too. So that makes me happy.
I think it's like the great challenge actually. It's to think about like who, whether it's a group or a person in the world who you think you're not.
Hmm.
I definitely have a group that I think that I'm not. And so, and for me, just to be totally transparent, it's like a white supremacist. Like I'm pretty sure that I'm not a
I
white
don't fall into
supremacist.
that category. Yeah. Yeah.
And I realized like actually I have a lot of intolerance and dislike that group. I have that feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I decided that I would sign on. So I've been doing this for now almost 2 years. So I have a practice. So every morning after I set meditation, I sign on to one of these white supremacist websites. And I do this every morning and it just for a few minutes. I don't recommend it, but like, but it's interesting. And, and they're so hateful.
Yeah.
And like all the things that are written on this blog that I sign on to, it's so hateful and so demeaning and so overgeneralizing about lots of things.
Mm.
And what's fascinating is like I still notice in my own experience how quickly I become just like them.
Interesting. Bec because
Like,
why? Like
because I
what's
feel
happening?
like they should be annihilated.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Okay. Okay.
It's crazy. Like, and I realized, oh my goodness, so to me, actually, that's the beginning of compassion when I realized, like, my goodness, I have those eviscerating thoughts also.
Mm-hmm. Let's
Talk
unpack
about
that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my
talk
God.
about humbling.
Yeah. Right.
And like, wow, to realize like I'm just like a white supremacist.
Mm-hmm.
I have the same kind of human quality.
Yeah.
And so it's to me like that's, so I don't necessarily recommend to go that extreme. That's a practice, but I think that it is really important to think about who in your life, maybe it's a people have perpetrated harm on us or they have put a pebble in our shoe. It could be just, that kind of innocuous, like someone, cuts in front of you or on the highway. Like it's that huge range, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of all the people who are like, eh.
Yes. I love that that's your noise for every person that sucks. That's so funny.
So whoever that is, like again, like the person on the highway or like a political group or a racial group or like anything that we think that we're not, to
Yeah.
me, it's like that's a great place to say like, well, how do I practice with that? And how do I find some place of connection?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I warm that connection?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you have to be best friends with the person, you know, it doesn't mean you have to like them or approve of what they do, but how do you actually recognize their humanity? Because actually, in my experience, it actually encourages my own humanity. But when I kind of nix a person or a group or whatever that is, like that is actually doing something to me.
Yeah, right. Right.
I'm thinking it's doing something to somebody else, but it's actually making me a bit smaller.
Yeah. Or even just like, for sure smaller, but also just like riled up. And then you start reeling, and then you start doing all of the negative things and emotions. And suddenly that person isn't involved at all. And it's just you upset in your room by yourself.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I mean, it's so, to me, it's so important actually, because it's, to me, what I'm always interested in is freedom for ourselves and each other.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like those are the places where we create little prisons for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so how do we just like have this life? We have such short lives, really, you know, like maybe 70 years, maybe 80 years, maybe more, but like, and for many people a lot less. And short time. So like might as well like use it to like learn something and actually warm it all up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And learn how to be more loving and of service in this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
Because
so
it feels good.
right, exactly. So on that note, it's my understanding that Carl Jung believed that humans are drawn to experiences of wholeness. Am I understanding that right? Okay. Is it possible? Like, is it possible to reach that wholeness? Because that's almost what that sounds like to me. Is if you're like constantly going out and trying to learn more and be more curious and understand people, that's where it comes from.
I think that we often have kind of a limited view of wholeness. I think that we can experience wholeness for sure and wholeheartedness. And to me, wholeheartedness includes everything.
Okay.
Like I sometimes my image is of the earth where there's like, you know, beautiful flowers and meadows and oceans and whales and dolphins and flamingos and also toxic dumps and, you know, the Pacific garbage patch and volcanoes, and like it has everything. So to see ourselves as whole is like seeing ourselves like the earth, like that we include, or as Walt Whitman said, you know, the great poet who said that
Mm-hmm.
we contain multitudes, like that the wholeness is not, I think many people get disappointed because we want the wholeness to be like My Little Pony with Hello Kitty and a rainbow, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
And I love Hello Kitty, but like, you know,
It's
it's
not real.
much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
She is cute.
It sure is. But that's about where it stops.
Exactly. Exactly.
If you had to pick one daily practice to bring more peace and happiness into your life, what would you pick?
Zazen, seated meditation.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Why do you answer? Why is that the answer? What do you think meditation does for you?
I think it doesn't do anything, which is why it's so great about it.
Got me. Good answer.
And it just teaches you how to be with things as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't give you anything. It doesn't give you a prize, no cookie, no, you know, it just, you learn how to be fearless in the midst of fear, comfortable in the midst of discomfort. And actually, where to me, it's like the ground of courageous compassion.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have a quick closing game for you. Kind of toxic, kind of well. Are you ready? What or
Ready.
who are you jealous of?
Kitty cats. Bodhidharma Burrito, our cat, he's this huge Maine Coon cat, and he's just like has this amazing life, and he's just like, and he's like to me the great teacher. So the jealousy is like, look at you just doing you.
Mm-hmm.
He's
Okay.
scared. He's scared when he's scared. He's hungry when he's hungry.
Yes,
He
yes.
sleeps when he sleeps.
I have to tell you, I have a cat. Her name is Judy. I have two cats, but Judy specifically. She, I swear to God, is a Zen Buddhist teacher in her past life. She freaks me out. Anytime I do yoga, she could be nowhere. She's there. Anytime I meditate, she's there. I like open my eyes, she's in front of me. I was sitting on the floor preparing for this interview. She's there. I'm like, who are you? Are you living with me?
She's like, I'm Judy.
Literally. It's just so weird. I'm like, you were a Zen teacher in your past life.
I love Judy.
Yeah, she's great. When is the last time you people pleased instead of doing or saying what you really wanted?
That's a juicy one. Last time I people, last night, when I really wanted sushi. I really wanted some sushi. And Chodo did not want sushi. And I was like, okay, we'll just order from wherever.
That's great.
It was not totally genuine.
No.
and yet loving. But it was definitely a people pleasing.
That's great. When are you selfish?
I can get really in the zone on the Stairmaster. I like old school. Like I love the Stairmaster, and like I can get really in a zone. And sometimes like I'm like, don't talk to me.
I'm doing something. That's wonderful.
Yeah, like literally this morning I was on the Stairmaster. I was like working the shit out, and it's intense, especially after like 40 minutes on that Stairmaster. It's like, whoa, and like someone came over and I was like,
blinders. That's great.
And I have a tiny bit of guilt.
Why? That's not being selfish. That's 100% selfish here. What do you find yourself overthinking about?
I guess maybe the thing I think the most about is how do I create the conditions for these teachings to be available after I'm
gone. Okay, good answer.
Yeah.
Untangled. Step one. What are you picky about?
I'm very picky about food. I'm very picky about order. And I'm very picky about work ethic.
Okay. I like it.
And responsibility.
Nice.
Yeah.
What makes you quick to get angry?
Apparently when my husband's peeking over my shoulder when he's not supposed to.
I knew you were gonna say that. When somebody ruins birthday surprises. What are you afraid of?
I still have a fear of snakes. And I actually even went to North Carolina to the Serpentarium to try to work with my fear of snakes. And I was afraid.
Were you? You left unchanged.
I was pretty curious, and I spent a long time like with this king cobra, but I was still like, which are very intense, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, they are.
It was like sizing me up. It's like, should I eat you? Yeah, I would say snakes.
Okay. What do you not have empathy for?
I think you keeping it real. I guess in those moments, like some of those white supremacists, like I have these moments of like, I have moments of disgust, And yeah, I feel like I mirror them in a way that is so uncomfortable, and the lack of empathy in moments, like when it just like, it's so intense.
It almost sounds like you don't have empathy for people that aren't compassionate, that practice hate.
Yeah, like the
White
same.
supremacy or anybody.
And I become the same.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Scary. If you could give one piece of advice to someone trying to become more well than toxic, what would it be?
When you're reflecting, maybe I would say going back to speech as practice, to like, and how you're talking to yourself and how you're talking to others, taking on the practice of that part of the path of, is it kind what I'm saying? Is it true? Is it necessary? And is it helpful? You know, how am I talking to myself? How am I talking to others? What kind of truths am I making?
Mm-hmm.
And do I really need to do that?
I love it. Such a good answer. Where can people find you? Where can they find your book?
My current book, Untangled, Walking the Eightfold Path to Clarity, Courage, and Compassion, is available on audiobook and a hardcover book and digital, anywhere books are sold. And also the previous book, Wholehearted, Slow Down,
She
Help
said,
Out,
Sarah,
Wake
read
Up.
it.
It's also available on Audible and anywhere books are sold. And you can find me on Instagram at Koshin Paley Ellison, and also the New York Zen Center at Instagram, on Instagram. And the Zen Center, we have lots of wonderful programs for people, including Zen meditation and these 90-day practice periods where we commit to sit and learn and study with 16 different teachers, and that's twice a year. And we also have a foundations and contemplative care training program, which again is for about people who want to bring their actions and their values together. And that all of that can be found at zencare.org.
Awesome. Koshin, you killed this interview. I'm so excited to have talked to you. Thank you a million times for being here. Mic drop. You are the best. Thank you.
You're the best.